Welcome to Voodoo Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of Resident Evil Requiem. I played on the PS5, it's also available on the Xbox Series, Nintendo Switch 2, and PC. So let's get into the story. You start out playing as Grace Ashcroft. She is the daughter of Alyssa Ashcroft. She has joined the FBI and she is sent basically to go investigate a weird murder at a hotel. All of these murder victims have the same MO, and so she goes and investigates and gets kidnapped. In steps Leon and he tries to chase down the guy who is apparently kidnapping Grace. Both of them wind up at the same Rhodes Medical Center and, well, things get crazy and zombie-ish and all of that stuff. There's a new doctor around and he's doing crazy creepy things, and he's been experimenting using the T-virus, and his version of the T-virus can create somewhat smart zombies. Zombies that can use weapons and maintain some of their previous functions. But it goes deeper and further than that, and I'm not going to get into any spoilers. Suffice to say, I really enjoyed the story. I think they did a great job overall. I do have a weird thing where they definitely retconned a couple of things here or there, but generally speaking, I really liked where the story went. Now let's move on to the audio. First thing I'm going to say is the voiceover work is top notch. Seriously great voiceover work for everyone, and I love the small details you get. All of them just do a wonderful job bringing their characters to life, whether they're supposed to be weird and creepy or, you know, classic Leon. Or Grace. I think what they did with Grace is really good because she's not sure of herself, she's scared, she's all of those things. But let's also not forget that some of these zombies can kind of talk now almost, and it's awesome and horrifying all at once. Because some of them just sound tortured, like they'd rather be dead than in the state that they're in. Like they're almost aware of what they are and what is going on. Then we'll get on to the music, which the music is good. I really think it works well and it helps set the tone when you're in danger or action sequences or when you're just walking around. It's not necessarily a soundtrack that I'm going to own, but I do think it works amazing for the game. But then there's the sound effects, which also has to be addressed because all of the weapons sound amazing. All the different footsteps sound amazing. The atmosphere around you sounds amazing. The weather, just every little detail of the sound effects is so well done. A couple of little details that I truly loved were like when you're playing as Grace, her breathing. If you listen for her breathing, she sounds scared. She sounds like she's just barely holding it together. But then with Leon, when you're shooting the casings, you can actually hear them hitting the ground or landing in water and making a sound like they're landing in water. Little details like that I just really fell in love with. Then there's the gameplay mechanics and whatnot, and this is a survival horror game, but two very different survival horror games. When you're playing as Grace, the default is first person, though you can play in third person, but that is very much like Resident Evil 7. You are sneaking about, you are not a badass by any stretch of the imagination. Ammo and health are limited, you have to cobble together supplies, you have to solve a lot of puzzles. Whereas when you're playing as Leon, it's much more Resident Evil 4, ammo and health are much more abundant, and you are a badass. You have been doing this for quite a while. I've seen a bunch of memes comparing like a horror movie to like a John Wick movie, and it feels kind of like that. It really does. Resident Evil Requiem really hits like the survival horror that it began with and where it went to, but without getting ridiculous, or at least too ridiculous. There were a couple of moments. At first, I wasn't sure how I felt about the juxtaposition, especially in the first half of the game, because you play so much as Grace, and you get little bits of playing as Leon, but the second half of the game, you get to play much more as Leon, and it's actually really impactful for reasons I won't get into. But like I said, with Grace, you are sneaking about, you are trying to avoid enemies, you are fighting if you need to. You do have a couple of really good items that can lead to stealth kills. But Grace's is the classic exploring, finding the keys, finding where you need to go, solving puzzles. And then, like I said, Leon, you are going around kicking ass, and that is mostly what he's doing. It is the action-oriented gameplay, and that's not a bad thing. I really enjoyed it. I definitely like the variety of weapons and how easily you can swap between them, as well as how that will interact with the different enemies. Leon does run into a bunch of different enemies, and so does Grace. And it's kind of fun because some of the enemies you're really expecting Leon to deal with, Grace has to deal with, and she has to deal with them very differently. And that's true of basically all the enemies. There are some shared item mechanics, like if you're running through as Grace, you can find ammo and leave it, and Leon can come for it later. or healing items or whatever, but I never found that to be too dire when I was running around as Leon. Maybe my first playthrough. But Leon does have a lot more options. He can wound an enemy, and with his axe, he can take them out immediately, whereas Grace will have an injector that can really fuck up enemies. But she's limited on that, whereas the axe, you can basically replenish as much as you want. One minor gripe I have with the gameplay is you get suppressed weapons, and they don't really matter. They matter in the sense that if you shoot at an enemy and miss, the enemy's not going to come after you. But the second you hit an enemy, they're not like, where the hell did that come from? Everybody knows and everybody comes after you. So it's kind of weird having a suppressed weapon that doesn't act like a suppressed weapon in that sense, but only if you miss. But let's move on to the controls, and I think the controls work really well in both situations. The first-person controls and third-person controls, which are essentially the same, it's just a change in camera angle, both work really, really well and are exactly as responsive as you need them to be. Then you've got the graphics and visuals, and it's a stunning looking game. It's really, really good looking, and it comes down to just everything. And when I say everything, I really do mean everything, whether it's the design of the characters, the jacket that Leon's wearing, the shirts, Grace's outfit, how she holds a gun, how she moves. Like, her portrayal is fantastic. And that's true of Leon's as well. The motion capture for both of them is great, and they truly bring these characters to life. But they even nail small little details. For example, when Grace is handed the Requiem, which is a big-ass hand cannon, Leon manipulates it like it's nothing, like it weighs absolutely nothing. Grace takes it, and you can clearly see that it is heavy for her. But it goes beyond that. When they're just using their normal guns, Leon is steady. He's a veteran. Whereas Grace has probably never fired her gun off of the range, and there's a shake in her hands, and you can see it. It's really a cool detail. But it goes beyond that because the graphics are so good that they bring everything to life, every horrible little detail, and there are some horrible details. And I mean that in the best way possible. You can shoot the zombies in the head and a chunk of their head will come off and you can see brain, or like you can hit them in the right place and their eyeballs start dangling out. It gets gruesome. But to go along with that, you have the character design and the enemy design. We've all seen The Girl, and that thing is horrifying. When that thing comes slithering out of a hole in the ceiling, it freaks you out the first time. But I think it's also just bringing the world to life. They did such a great job with that, paying respect to the Resident Evil you know, but also adding to it. That being said, I did have a weird visual glitch going on with the slings on some of my weapons. It's strange, they would just suddenly become rigid and stick out directly behind me, and it just looked like a weird line on the screen for no reason. I am in the middle of my second playthrough now, or more than middle, and it hasn't happened to me. It only happened to me in my first playthrough, but it is weird and distracting, and I just don't know why it was going on. I had to get through some like cutscene / loading screen-ish things. There's not really a loading screen, it jumps smoothly, but once I would do that and there was clearly a hidden loading screen, it would clean up and not be a problem, but it was still distracting when it was happening. I didn't have any major glitches, but I did have one overall kind of tonal moment. Overall, I love the tone of the game. Both of the games jammed together. You get the good classic survival horror as well as, you know, the more Resident Evil 4 and onward action survival horror kind of vibes. But there is one scene, we'll call it, that I do think we could have lived without. They could have come up with something else. It starts to almost get into that Resident Evil 6 area and then gets there just for a moment and comes back. And it brings it way the hell back to exactly what you've been in love with the rest of the game. But I do need to call out that moment. If you've played, you already know what moment that is. If you haven't played yet, you will know. Which kind of buries the lead, so let's get into the wrap up. Yes, I recommended this game. Plain and simple. I have been playing Resident Evil for a very long time. It has had its ups, it has had its downs, and this is definitely a high in the franchise. I have absolutely zero problem recommending this game. I thought it was great. I beat it and literally started a new playthrough right away. Okay, so in the comments down below, why don't you tell me, what's your favorite 9th entry in a franchise? I know it's not really the 9th entry, but it's number 9. As always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share and subscribe. Have a good one.